I thought last year was one of the worst coaching jobs I have ever seen. Quite frankly, had I been the athletic director at Southern Cal, I would have fired Lincoln Riley because he's yet to show, after many years as a head coach, he knows anything about defense. He's gone through defensive coordinators. He just simply couldn't handle it. And now things are going to be 5 times worse in the Big Ten. On top of that, a number of his top players are bailing out. This is a guy who owned LA for about a half a minute, and quite frankly, next year at this time, I think he'll more than likely be an assistant in the NFL if he's that lucky.
Wow, don't you just love when Finebaum goes off? And just like that, we've got the mouth of the South here, Paul Finebaum. Mad Dog, you have thoughts about what you just said, do you not?
Paul, I love you. You're a good man, but get out of the sun or the heat. I know you're hot. I mean, he's had 3 Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, 3 in Mayfield, Murray, and Hurts, and he's been to 3 Final Fours. I mean, geez, he's been in 3 Final Fours, and there is outside of Alabama, Georgia, any program in the country would take that. Anywhere, Texas would take it, Ohio State would take it, Michigan would take it. He's been to 3 Final Fours and 3 Heisman Trophies. Granted, the defense last year was horrendous. He's been at USC for 2 years. I mean, and he is a tremendous play caller. Do I love him on the defensive side of the ball? You're 100% right. Get a good defensive coordinator. But when you have that kind of track record of 3 Final Fours and 3 Heisman Trophies, and remember, those quarterbacks, I mean, let's face it, Hurts was, I don't know, he was not a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, of course, at Alabama. And then Mayfield, you know, was bouncing around, and he wasn't a great quarterback in the NFL, and he figured out a way to get them great in college. You got to take it easy. When you have that kind of track record, you get a little leash when you start a new job. I have no problem with Lincoln Riley. He can coach my team anytime he wants. He's that good a coach.
Doggy, we all are impressed with what he did at Oklahoma. Okay, well, we'll give him a parade. But the bottom line is he ran away from Oklahoma because he was afraid of being in the SEC. So he goes to Southern Cal. He takes Caleb Williams with him. Good for him. And hey, Caleb Williams won the Heisman. Congratulations. He was outstanding. He got hurt, and they didn't win the championship. They didn't get to the playoffs. But last year, if you were paying attention, Doggy, and I know you were, we saw a complete and total meltdown, a crash and burn of epic proportions. I realize you live in New York, but you're in LA a lot. And that's a town that doesn't tolerate that. And he's lost the mojo. He had that town in the palm of his hands. He was on the same level as the Dodgers and LeBron. And then it all went away, and players are fleeing, and now they're in a real league. I mean, they are in the Big Ten, and nobody's going to be talking about them. Oregon is the big new shiny coin from that part of the country. Washington, a year out of the national championship. Ohio State, probably more talent than anybody. They're not going to get a sniff for the national championship or the playoffs this year. And frankly, I think they're going to run out of patience with him, Doggy. So listen, you can give him a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Oscars, the Irvin Thalberg Award. I don't care, but I think Lincoln Riley is done at Southern Cal. So I mean, you made a convincing argument, but you didn't sell me.
Well, first off, LA is a much better place to live than Norman, Oklahoma, and USC is historically a 20 times better job than Oklahoma. Number one, he also beat Texas. He also killed Texas every single year. Texas never beat Oklahoma. So he beats Texas. He gets to 3 Final Fours. He wins 3 Heisman Trophies with 3 different quarterbacks. And now you're telling me he ran out of Oklahoma because he was afraid of the SEC when it's the USC Trojans, one of the great jobs in college football? That is inaccurate. I'd take that job too, so would you. USC is a much better job.
First of all, Doggy, hold on a second, Doggy. Hold on a second, Doggy. I was in Norman, Oklahoma 2 weeks ago, and it's a much better college football town than Los Angeles, and you know it. I mean, Los Angeles cares about winners, and if you don't win, and if you don't have the glitter, which he won't have anymore now that Caleb is gone, you'll be back page. That's all there is to it. I walked through the trophy case in Norman, and my eyes popped out, from Bud Wilkinson to Barry Switzer to Bob Stoops. And yeah, Lincoln Riley did okay. They don't even claim Lincoln Riley anymore. You can't find his name in Norman because they look at him as a coward and a loser. And Oklahoma is one of the great traditions. You're thinking way back. Oklahoma has been in the playoffs. Yeah, Lincoln got there. How did he get there? He took over a great program. Bob Stoops handed it to him. And yes, he developed quarterbacks. I'll give him credit. But you can't win in college football without playing defense. And Lincoln has never figured that out, and I don't think he's going to figure it out in time.
Yeah, that's my point. When it comes to winning at the highest level in college football, you got to be able to get stops defensively. And I look at the 5 losses that the USC Trojans had last season. They were outrushed. They were out-physicaled up front. I look at 2 games in particular versus the Utah Utes. They gave up over 200-plus yards on the ground. I look at the game versus Washington. Did you view Washington as a rushing football team last season?
Oh, that running back is good.
Yes, what did you view them as?
Passing.
They rushed over 300-some yards last year, doggy.
I understand.
The defense of the USC Trojans couldn't stop a nosebleed, not just in 2023, but in 2022. So it's 2 years in a row, and I think for Lincoln Riley, as good as he is offensively and coaching quarterbacks and calling plays, you have to understand that you can't just focus on the offensive side of the ball. You have to have a defense. You have to have the D linemen. You have to have the offensive linemen. I didn't think they did a great job of protecting the quarterback either. So them moving into the Big Ten, it's going to be a rude awakening for them because the physicality in the Big Ten versus the physicality that was in the Pac-12, I think on 2 different spectrums in my opinion.
Well, the Big Ten is so overrated outside of the 2 schools. Those teams stink. Penn State's not any good. Wisconsin can't beat anybody. Iowa has no offense. No, they got 2 teams, Ohio State and Michigan.
Penn State can play. Their problem is they just ran into Ohio State and Michigan.
Well, also the problem is their coach doesn't win big games. He can't beat a big top 10 team.
Fair.
And they got beat badly at Ole Miss last year in the bowl game. I mean, all of a sudden the Big Ten is some conference that Lincoln Riley, Paulie, can't figure out how to navigate? Those teams are, Northwestern, Minnesota, Illinois? You're telling me these teams, Nebraska, these are big-time teams?
Well, don't sleep on Nebraska now. Don't sleep on Nebraska.
You're doing something I can't, but you're forcing me to defend the Big Ten at the SEC Media Days, but Oregon might be one of the most talented teams in the country under Dan Lanning. They've got a great quarterback. Penn State, yeah, they're a 10-2 team, but that will get you in the playoffs this year. Michigan, we don't need to talk about. Ohio State's got as much talent as Georgia. I mean, Doggy, I'm worried about you. I don't know what you did over the 4th of July, but man, you must have eaten too many Nathan's hot dogs.
And Oregon's another team that never wins a big game. Lost twice last year to Washington. Never wins a big game.
I have to stop you right there on Oregon because, number one, their quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, has a great chance to win the Heisman Trophy this year. The transfers that they were able to get, what Dan Lanning has been instilling into that entire team, not just offensively or defensively, but special teams as well, all 3 phases. I wouldn't – listen, Oregon and Ohio State, in my opinion, are going to play for the Big Ten championship. And Oregon, I think they're on the same level. I really do.
Well, I tell you guys, well, here again, one more time. Nebraska stinks. Penn State never wins a big game. Wisconsin never has an offense. They're Northwestern, no big deal. Illinois, not Indiana. I mean, you got Iowa, who has no offense. They can't score. They're the worst team in the world. They can't. Mind you, Canaan High School's got a better offense than Iowa. I mean, they have no offense. You're talking about Oregon, a Pac-12 team that he's very familiar with, Ohio State and Michigan. And Michigan's not going to be the same this year anyway. New coach, no quarterback. That's not a big deal. And somehow you think, Paulie, that he ran away from Oklahoma because he was worried about going into the SEC? You don't believe that, do you? You possibly can't believe that.
I do believe that. And Doggy, I've been to Norman a couple of times lately, and they believe it there too. I mean, listen. He looked at the SEC, which has thrashed him repeatedly in championship games and in playoff games. I mean, LSU, go back a couple of years ago, 2019, and rewatch the LSU game against Oklahoma. I mean, it was like 55-6 or something. I mean, it was embarrassing. And that's the problem. Lincoln knew he couldn't compete because he didn't have the physicality. Oh, he had the great players. He had the great quarterbacks, the skill position, but he's never been able to put it on the other side, and he knew that wouldn't compute or compete in the SEC, so he hightailed it. Now, if he knew now, well, that they were going to the Big Ten, he might have thought it over, because he's no better off today than he would have been in the SEC. But, I mean, he is not even a factor in his own league, Doggy. That's my point. And you're protecting him like, you know, let's give him a lifetime award for what he did at Oklahoma, but that doesn't matter anymore. You know USC fans.
Paulie's been at USC.
A lot of coaches out there.
Paulie's been at USC for 2 years and won a Heisman Trophy, for crying out loud.
I know, Doggy.
Take it easy.
I know how long he's been there. But this program is not that big of a deal anymore. I mean, this isn't John McKay. I mean, this isn't John Robinson.
It takes 5 minutes.
Pete Carroll.
It takes 5 minutes. Get a couple of players, 80,000 at the LA Coliseum.
It took 5 minutes, Doggy. It took 5 minutes for him to crash the program last year. Were you watching? They almost went 6-6. They barely won.
Well, Hunter, now, Paul, how do you feel? Well, did they win the championship before he got there? They stunk. They fired coaches left and right. So it wasn't like he took over a great program.
Now.
They were terrible, Paul, before he took the job. Awful. This is not the board going to Alabama and Saban. USC was a mess. He didn't take over a good program. They were terrible. USC was, what was their record before he got there the year before? Did they lose 5 games? 4 games?
But Doggy, in the transfer, I mean, he brought a bunch of players. He brought the best player in the country with him.
And won a Heisman Trophy with him.
He didn't get much out of him.
And he won a Heisman Trophy! At a place where they win Heisman with Marcus Allen and Charles White and Simpson.
How many trophies did he, how many
Carson Palmer
trophies did he hold up?
Well, hold on now. You talk about Heisman Trophy at USC, that means everything. Carson Palmer, Leinart, Reggie Bush, Simpson. That's what they love, Heisman trophies. And he brought a Heisman Trophy there. That counts. That counts.
I mean, you're using
they love
O.J.
Heisman trophies at
Simpson as
USC.
the reason why USC is good? Come on.
It's USC. They've been around since 1910. New Rockney. USC. That's why. It's a much better program than Oklahoma. I'm surprised at you. Go talk about Vanderbilt football.
Give me something. Got a cigarette.